Rome did not fall in a single night. It faded, slowly, quietly, while the world slept. An empire that ruled continents, commanded legions, and named the months themselves did not collapse with fire and thunder, but with silence, compromise, and time. Its people still called themselves Romans long after Rome had lost its power. Its laws outlived its emperors. Its ideas survived even after its cities fell. Tonight, we will not watch Rome burn. We will listen as it slowly fades from marble and gold into memory. Good evening, and welcome to Noctivara Stories. Wherever you are listening from tonight, thank you for choosing this quiet moment. Let the day loosen its grip. Let your shoulders fall. Let your breathing slow, naturally. Nothing here will hurry you. Nothing asks anything of you. Tonight, history moves gently, not as something to be studied, but as a story to drift through, carried softly into the night. Tonight, we drift into the long memory of an empire that once shaped the world with roads, laws, and restless ambition. An empire that began not in marble halls or thunderous triumphs, but beside a slow, brown river under open sky. From shepherd paths along the Tiber to the echoing chambers of the Roman Senate. From dust rising beneath marching sandals to emperors pacing sleepless behind palace walls. This is the story of Rome. Whether you're listening beneath a blanket of darkness, eyes already heavy, or simply seeking refuge in the distant past, this time is yours. Let the centuries unfold gently. Rome took over 2,000 years to rise, change, fracture, and endure. Tonight, we begin at the very beginning. Before Rome was an idea, before it was a power, it was a place. Mist lingered along the banks of the Tiber in the early morning light. The river moved patiently, swelling with seasonal rains, spilling into low marshlands where reeds whispered and birds nested undisturbed. Hills rose gently beyond the floodplain, their slopes untouched by walls or temples. No empire yet pressed its weight into the soil. There were no triumphal arches. No paved roads stretching outward like veins. Only wilderness, quiet breath, and time. And yet, even before the city existed, its story had already begun. The Romans believed that places remember. That land holds memory long before stone gives it form. And so they told a tale, repeated so often that it fused with the ground itself, a legend not meant to be questioned, but lived with. The story speaks of a woman named Rhea Silvia. She was a Vestal virgin, sworn to a life of ritual purity, bound by sacred law and royal command. Her uncle, King Amulius of Alba Longa, had placed her in the priesthood not out of reverence, but fear. Any sons she bore could challenge his stolen throne. But destiny, the Romans believed, does not yield easily to human orders. In silence and secrecy, the god Mars came to her. Not as thunder or flame, but as an unseen force. From this union, twin boys were born, Romulus and Remus. When Amulius learned of their existence, his fear hardened into command. The infants were to be removed. Not slain by blade, but surrendered to the river, left to the judgment of water and chance. The twins were placed into a basket and set upon the Tiber's swollen current. The river, heavy with spring rains, carried them gently, not toward death, but toward shore. Near the roots of a fig tree at the base of the Palatine Hill, the basket came to rest. There, a she-wolf found them. Not a monster of later imagination, but a living creature drawn by instinct. Warm breath. Watchful eyes. She carried the children into shelter and nursed them as her own. In this image, Rome saw itself reflected, fierce, protective, born of necessity rather than comfort. Later, a shepherd named Faustulus discovered the boys and raised them among fields and flocks. They grew strong beneath open skies, unaware of royal blood or divine inheritance. They learned survival, rivalry, and resilience. Rome would recognize itself in them. As young men, Romulus and Remus learned the truth of their origin. Together, they restored their grandfather to the throne of Alba Longa. The debt repaid, they turned their gaze back to the river, to the land where they had been saved. Something there called to them. They chose to build a city of their own. But Rome, even in its first breath, could not escape conflict. The brothers disagreed, over leadership, over location, over signs from the gods. Omens were read in the sky. Birds were counted. Each claimed divine favor. Anger followed. Then violence. Remus died. Whether by Romulus's hand or another's mattered less than the truth the Romans carried forward. Their city was founded through fracture, through loss, through a choice that could not be undone. Romulus drew a boundary in the soil, declaring it sacred. No one could cross it without death. Law, he proclaimed, would stand above kinship. On April 21, 753 BC, Rome was said to be born. Romulus ruled as the city's first king, and after him came others. Rome remained a monarchy for over 2 centuries, though its kings were not tyrants in the later sense. Each shaped the city in different ways. Numa Pompilius brought peace and ritual. He gave Rome its calendar, its priesthoods, its sense of sacred rhythm. Under him, time itself became ordered. Others followed, some warriors, some builders, some reformers. Bridges were raised across the Tiber. Walls were extended. Roads took shape. Rome learned how to govern, even as it learned how to conquer. But power gathered weight. The final king, Tarquin the Proud, ruled without restraint. He silenced counsel. He ruled through fear. His reign ended not in foreign defeat, but moral collapse. When his son violated Lucretia, and her death shook the city, Rome broke its crown. The kings were expelled. The word rex became poison. Rome would never again tolerate a throne. Or so they believed. In place of kings, Rome created offices. Power was divided, limited, temporary. 2 consuls ruled side by side. The Senate advised. Assemblies gathered citizens. It was an experiment, uneven, imperfect, alive. Conflict did not vanish. It moved inward. Patricians and plebeians struggled for generations. Walkouts, protests, compromises. Laws were written down. Rights were demanded. The Republic learned through tension. Rome was not calm. It was persistent. Beyond the city walls, rivals waited. Tribes clashed. Armies formed. Rome fought, lost, learned, adapted. And one night, disaster came. Gauls breached the city. Fires burned. Fear spread. Rome survived, but only barely. From that scar, something hardened. Rome would never forget how close it came to ending before it truly began. And so the story continues. Not yet an empire. Not yet invincible. But awake now. Watching. Remembering. Rome fell once. Its streets filled with smoke and screams, fire licking along wooden roofs, blood soaking into stones that had only recently learned the weight of walls. The invaders stripped the city of dignity as much as of life, and when the killing slowed, the survivors gathered gold, family treasure, temple offerings, melted heirlooms, to buy their freedom back. It was a ransom paid not only in metal, but in memory. The sack left a scar that never truly faded. Romans would speak of it for generations, not as a tale of defeat, but as a warning carved into the soul of the city. From that humiliation grew resolve. Walls were thickened. Towers rose higher. The army was reshaped, disciplined, and hardened. Rome swore never again to kneel in its own streets. The Republic survived, not because it was stable, but because it could bend without breaking. It stumbled, fractured, argued with itself, then stitched its wounds and moved forward. It was no longer ruled by kings, but it was not yet ruled by law alone. It lived in tension, an unfinished system held together by habit, fear, ambition, and hope. Its people marched and protested. They served and resisted. Magistracies multiplied. Legions slowly took form. And beneath every decree and every stone laid, the idea of the Republic pulsed quietly, still searching for its final shape. Rome did not grow because destiny carried it forward. It grew because it fought. Italy was not empty land waiting for conquest. It was crowded with ancient cities, proud tribes, and cultures older than Rome itself. Hill peoples guarded mountain passes. Greek colonies glittered along the southern coasts. Etruscan kings had ruled before Rome was even a rumor. Rome did not sweep across the peninsula in a single triumphant surge. It struggled. It bled. It negotiated, betrayed, retreated, and returned. Every mile was earned. In its earliest years, expansion was survival. After the sack, Rome looked outward not with dreams of empire, but with suspicion. Borders hardened. Retaliation followed retaliation. Treaties were made, broken, and rewritten. The Latin cities, once allies and equals, rose against Roman dominance. Rome answered decisively. The League was dismantled, and in its place came something new, a web of direct bonds tying each city to Rome alone. This system did not promise equality. It promised belonging on Roman terms. Cities kept their councils, their gods, their festivals. In return, they gave soldiers. They gave loyalty. And slowly, they gave themselves. To the east, the Samnites held the highlands. They were fierce, disciplined, and intimate with the land. They fought not in open plains, but in narrow passes and wooded ravines where Roman formations faltered. The wars between Rome and the Samnites stretched across decades, grinding down generations on both sides. Rome suffered one of its most painful humiliations at the Caudine Forks, where trapped legions were forced to surrender and pass beneath a symbolic yoke. The memory burned. But Rome did what it always did. It learned. Its army adapted. Its formations shifted. Roads cut through mountains. Alliances deepened. Rome was not simply winning battles, it was building systems that made future victories possible. When the Samnite Wars finally ended, Rome stood stronger, more flexible, and more dangerous than before. The south brought a different challenge. The Greek cities of Magna Graecia were wealthy, cultured, and proud. They saw Rome as a coarse inland power, ambitious but unsophisticated. When Roman influence pressed too close, Tarentum called for help from across the sea. Pyrrhus of Epirus answered. He arrived with phalanxes hardened by Hellenistic warfare and war elephants, creatures Rome had never faced. He defeated the Romans in battle, but at terrible cost. Each victory drained his strength until triumph itself became unsustainable. Rome endured. Pyrrhus withdrew. His name lived on as a lesson. Victory that costs everything is no victory at all. By the mid-3rd century BCE, no power in Italy could truly challenge Rome. Rome did not rule Italy through uniform control. It ruled through design. Some cities received full citizenship, others partial rights. Many remained technically independent, bound by treaty and obligation. The system was uneven by intention. Loyalty flowed upward to Rome, but sideways unity was discouraged. This kept rebellion isolated, resistance fragmented. With Italy secured, Rome possessed unmatched manpower, hardened legions, and roads that stitched the peninsula together. Confidence grew. So did appetite. Across the sea waited wealth and danger. Carthage ruled the western waters. Its harbors were deep and crowded. Its merchants reached from Spain to Africa. Its power rested not on legions, but on ships and silver. For a time, Rome and Carthage coexisted, uneasy, watchful, restrained. Between them lay Sicily. In the mid-3rd century BCE, a small conflict there pulled both powers into confrontation. What began cautiously became Rome's first true war beyond Italy. Rome had little naval experience. Carthage ruled the sea. So Rome learned. Captured ships became models. Crews trained relentlessly. Boarding bridges turned naval battles into infantry fights. Storms destroyed fleets. Battles swung wildly. For over 20 years, the First Punic War dragged on. Rome endured. In 241 BCE, Carthage sued for peace. Sicily became Rome's first overseas province. The Republic had crossed a threshold. Peace did not last. In Spain, Carthage rebuilt. Rome watched. And from that rebuilding emerged a name Rome would never forget. Hannibal Barca. In 218 BC, he crossed the Alps with an army drawn from many peoples and marched straight into Italy. What followed was terror shaped into strategy. At Trebia, at Lake Trasimene, at Cannae, Roman armies were annihilated. Tens of thousands died. Southern cities defected. Panic stalked the Senate. But Rome refused to surrender. Under cautious leadership, it avoided decisive battle and wore Hannibal down. The war spread outward. Spain, Africa. A young commander rose, Publius Cornelius Scipio. At Zama, the tide turned. Hannibal was defeated. Carthage was broken. Rome stood supreme. The Republic survived Hannibal, but it was no longer the same. It had learned to think beyond defense, beyond Italy, beyond restraint. The Mediterranean began to feel smaller. Carthage lingered, wealthy, watched, resented. In Rome, voices grew louder. Among them, Cato the Elder, ending every speech with the same demand: Carthage must be destroyed. When war came again, it was not a contest. It was an ending. Rome returned to Carthage not to negotiate, but to erase. The siege lasted years. Hunger hollowed the city. Resistance burned fiercely to the last. Street by street, Carthage fell. When it was over, the city was leveled. Its people sold. Its name turned into a warning. Rome stood alone. The fires that consumed Carthage did more than erase a city. They signaled the end of an age. When Roman legions finally broke through the walls, the fighting did not stop. It crept through streets and homes, room by room, doorway by doorway. Survivors were dragged away in chains. Those who resisted were cut down where they stood. Carthage, once a rival that had nearly destroyed Rome itself, was reduced to rubble. Later generations would claim the land was salted so nothing might ever grow there again. Whether fact or poetry, the meaning was clear: Carthage was not meant to return. But Carthage was only half the story. While Rome dominated the Western Mediterranean, the Eastern world still belonged, at least in memory, to Greece and the heirs of Alexander the Great. Macedonia, once the heart of an empire stretching from the Aegean to the edge of India, had fractured after Alexander's death. His generals divided his conquests into rival kingdoms, rich in culture, wealth, and prestige, but weakened by rivalry and complacency. Rome, fresh from its victories in the West, began to look eastward. At first, Rome claimed it was merely protecting allies. But protection soon became intervention. Intervention became control. And control led, inevitably, to war. The Macedonian Wars unfolded slowly, almost politely at first. Rome inserted itself into Greek politics, offering arbitration, demanding concessions, and punishing resistance. Each conflict pushed Roman influence deeper into the Greek world. When Macedon resisted, Rome declared war. When Greek cities revolted, Rome responded with force. In 146 BCE, the symmetry became impossible to ignore. The same year Carthage was erased in the west, Corinth, the commercial heart of Greece, was destroyed in the east. Statues were torn from temples. Art, gold, and sacred treasures were loaded onto Roman ships and carried westward. Greece, the teacher of Rome in philosophy, art, and thought, had become a province. Within months, two ancient powers had fallen. Rome stood alone. What followed was not announced as an empire. There was no single declaration, no moment when Rome formally claimed dominion over the known world. Instead, empire arrived quietly through administration and habit. Provinces appeared across Spain, North Africa, Greece, and Asia Minor. Governors were appointed, some fair, others corrupt. Tribute flowed toward Rome. Gold, grain, slaves, art. The city swelled with wealth and ambition. Marble replaced brick. Villas spread across the countryside. Triumphs marched through the streets, celebrating generals who had extended Rome's reach farther than ever before. Yet beneath the monuments, something was beginning to fracture. The Roman army was no longer what it had been. Once, soldiers were farmers who returned home after seasonal campaigns. Now they fought for years in distant lands. When they returned, many found their farms ruined, seized by creditors, or absorbed into vast estates owned by the wealthy. These great estates, latifundia, were worked not by citizens, but by slaves captured in Rome's endless wars. The rich grew richer. The poor crowded into the city, dependent on grain distributions and promises from ambitious politicians. The Senate still met. The assemblies still voted. The rituals of the Republic remained intact. But the balance was gone. The gap between rich and poor widened until it strained the foundations of the state. The Republic, designed to distribute power carefully across offices and classes, began to sway beneath the weight of its own success. The countryside felt the strain first. Veterans returned home with nothing. Dispossessed farmers became an urban mass, angry, restless, and increasingly detached from the old ideals of civic duty. They listened to voices that promised change, reform, and justice. And those voices soon found names. Tiberius Gracchus believed the Republic could still be healed. Born into a noble family but deeply sympathetic to the poor, he proposed a bold solution in 133 BC, land reform. Public land, illegally seized by the wealthy, would be redistributed to landless citizens. It was legal, it was moral, and it terrified the Senate. When resistance mounted, Tiberius bypassed tradition and brought his proposal directly to the people. The move shattered political norms. When he sought re-election as tribune, his enemies claimed he aimed at kingship. Violence followed. In a riot on the Capitoline Hill, Tiberius was beaten to death. His body was thrown into the Tiber without ceremony. Reform had been answered with murder. A decade later, his brother Gaius took up the cause. More charismatic and more ambitious, Gaius proposed sweeping reforms: land redistribution, subsidized grain, judicial changes, and citizenship for Rome's Italian allies. Crowds gathered to hear him speak. Momentum built. Fear followed. This time, the Senate acted through law and violence combined. They issued the Senator's Consultum Ultimum, granting emergency powers to crush opposition. When fighting erupted, Gaius fled. Cornered outside the city, he chose death over capture. His followers were hunted down and executed. The message was unmistakable. Rome would kill to preserve itself. The deaths of the Gracchi changed Roman politics forever. Violence was no longer unthinkable. It became a tool. Into this new reality stepped men who understood power differently, generals who promised loyalty, land, and glory to their soldiers. One of them was Gaius Marius. From humble origins, Marius reformed the army, opening it to the landless poor. In return, soldiers became loyal not to the Republic, but to their commander. His victories made him indispensable. His repeated consulships shattered tradition. Then came Sulla. When political rivalry turned into armed conflict, Sulla did what no Roman had done before. He marched his army on Rome itself. He seized the city, declared himself dictator, and unleashed purges that drenched Rome in blood. When he retired, he claimed the Republic was restored. It was not. The institutions remained, but their spirit was broken. Elections were corrupt. The Senate reacted rather than ruled. The people no longer trusted law. They trusted strength. They were ready for a savior. Into this fractured world stepped Gaius Julius Caesar. He was born to an ancient name but inherited little else. He had watched purges destroy his family's allies. He learned early that power in Rome belonged not to tradition, but to timing, influence, and risk. Caesar was charming, relentless, and brilliant. He mastered rhetoric, law, and war. He aligned himself with the people, courted public favor, and formed powerful alliances behind the scenes. In 59 BCE, he became consul. When his term ended, he secured command in Gaul. What followed was conquest on an unprecedented scale. For nearly a decade, Caesar subdued Gaul, crossed into Britain, and sent vivid accounts of his victories back to Rome. His legend grew. His army adored him. His enemies feared him. He became too powerful to ignore. When the Senate ordered him to return without his army, they believed they were defending the Republic. Caesar understood the truth. Power is never surrendered willingly. In 49 BCE, he crossed the Rubicon River, an act of treason and a declaration of civil war. According to tradition, he spoke words that would echo through history. The die is cast. And with that step, the Republic entered its final chapter. The die is cast. With those words, Rome plunged into chaos. Pompey fled eastward, gathering forces among the Greek provinces, while Caesar pursued him across the sea. The two men who had once stood side by side, bound by ambition and convenience, now faced each other as enemies. Their confrontation came at Pharsalus in 48 BCE. Caesar's army was outnumbered, but it was hardened by years of campaign and bound by fierce loyalty. Pompey's forces broke. The battle was swift and decisive. Pompey fled again, this time to Egypt, believing safety awaited him there. It did not. Hoping to win Caesar's favor, Egyptian courtiers murdered Pompey upon his arrival. When Caesar reached Alexandria, they presented him with his rival's severed head. He did not celebrate. He turned away in grief. Whether his tears were born of genuine sorrow or careful political theater, no one could say. But the message was clear. This was not how Caesar had wished to win. Caesar remained in Egypt longer than expected. There, he became entangled in a royal struggle between the Ptolemies and aligned himself with Cleopatra, brilliant, ambitious, and determined to reclaim her throne. Their alliance was both political and personal. Together they traveled the Nile. Together they imagined futures that stretched beyond Rome's traditions. Cleopatra bore him a son, the only child Caesar ever acknowledged. For a moment, it seemed the world itself might be reshaped by their union. But Rome waited. When Caesar finally returned, no force remained to challenge him. He was named dictator, first briefly, then for 10 years, and finally for life. He reformed the calendar, expanded the Senate, planned land for veterans, and eased debt burdens. He spoke of restoring the Republic, yet accepted honors that dissolved the distinction between citizen and king. Statues rose in his likeness. His face appeared on coins. He sat upon a golden chair in the Senate, draped in purple, answering to no one. The Republic had not been abolished, it had simply faded. And in that fading, resentment grew. On the Ides of March 1544 BCE, Caesar entered the Senate House. Whether he ignored the warnings or believed himself untouchable, history does not know. What awaited him was betrayal. Senators, many once his allies, surrounded him. Blades flashed. He was stabbed again and again, more than 20 times. He fell at the foot of Pompey's statue, blood pooling where his rival's image looked on. He spoke no words that history can confirm. The conspirators believed they had saved the Republic. Instead, they tore open its final wound. Caesar's death did not restore Rome. It shattered what remained. The Senate had no plan. The people did not rejoice. They mourned. Crowds filled the forum as Mark Antony stood before them, grief in his voice and fire in his words. He read Caesar's will. He named Caesar's heir. He lifted the blood-soaked cloak for all to see. Confusion turned to rage. Rome did not rise to defend the Republic. It rose to avenge Caesar. Caesar's chosen successor was not a seasoned general or towering statesman. He was a teenager, Gaius Octavius. At the time of Caesar's murder, Octavius was in Greece, studying quietly, gathering no renown. But when the news reached him, he did not hesitate. He crossed the sea and entered Rome with calm resolve. He did not shout. He did not threaten. He observed. He negotiated. And when the moment came, he joined forces with Mark Antony and Marcus Lepidus to form a legally sanctioned alliance. The Second Triumvirate granted extraordinary powers to hunt Caesar's killers. Brutus and Cassius were defeated at Philippi in 42 BCE. Both took their own lives. The men who sought to save the Republic died far from it. The alliance did not last. Antony drifted eastward, deeper into Cleopatra's orbit. Their bond, romantic and political, alarmed Rome. Octavian remained in the west, quietly consolidating power, presenting himself as the defender of Roman values. In 31 BCE, the conflict came to a head at sea near Actium. Octavian's fleet prevailed. Antony and Cleopatra fled to Egypt, where both chose death over capture. Rome stood with one ruler left. Octavian did not declare himself monarch. He understood Rome too well. Instead, he allowed the Senate to grant him honors, titles, and authority piece by piece. In 27 BCE, he accepted the name Augustus, the revered one. He called himself Princeps, the first citizen. He claimed to restore the Republic. Yet his power was absolute. The legions swore loyalty to him. The provinces answered to his governors. The Senate obeyed. The people welcomed him. Under Augustus, Rome entered the Pax Romana, a long era of peace and stability. Roads spread across continents. Trade flourished. Cities bloomed. He reshaped the army into a professional force loyal to the state and created the Praetorian Guard to protect the emperor himself. He ruled for over 40 years, long enough for an entire generation to know no other system. Augustus left no clear heir. Sons died. Plans unraveled. In the end, he chose his stepson, Tiberius. When Augustus died in 14 CE, the Senate declared him a god. Temples rose. The Republic was gone in all but name. Tiberius ruled with discipline but without warmth. Where Augustus had inspired, Tiberius suspected. Informants flourished. Power gathered in dangerous hands. When he withdrew to Capri, fear ruled the capital. After his death in 37 CE, power passed to his grandnephew, Caligula. Caligula began as a promise. Young, charismatic, the son of a beloved general, he was welcomed with joy. Then something broke. He declared himself divine. He ruled through spectacle and terror. Executions became entertainment. After 4 years, he was murdered by his own guards. They found his uncle Claudius hiding behind a curtain and proclaimed him emperor. Claudius was underestimated, awkward, scholarly, dismissed for years. Yet he proved capable. He expanded the empire into Britannia, reformed administration, and extended citizenship across the provinces. But palace intrigue shadowed his reign. His wife, Agrippina the Younger, ensured her son would succeed him. Whether by poison or fate, Claudius died. Nero ascended the throne. Nero wished not to rule, but to perform. He sang. He raced. He imagined Rome as a stage and himself as its star. When fire consumed the city in 64 CE, he rebuilt in his own image and blamed Christians, unleashing brutal persecution. His rule collapsed into paranoia and violence. Abandoned by the legions, Nero ended his life alone. With him, the Julio-Claudian dynasty ended. The empire remained. Families fell. Emperors rose and died. But the system Augustus built endured. Rome had traded freedom for stability, and it would not go back. The Republic was a memory now, and the age of emperors had only begun. The throne could be emptied, but the empire would not collapse. Not yet. Rome had become something larger than any single ruler. Larger than the Senate. Larger even than the city itself. It was an idea now, spread across continents, embedded in roads, laws, and habits of daily life. Emperors could fall, but the machinery they commanded continued to turn. After Nero's death, that machinery shuddered. For the first time since Augustus, no clear successor stood ready. What followed was a year of confusion remembered as the year of the 4 emperors, a violent reminder that Rome was no longer ruled by votes or tradition, but by the loyalty of soldiers. Galba claimed power first, an old senator with rigid principles and no bond with the legions. He ruled briefly before being dragged through the streets and killed. Otho followed, then Vitellius, each lifted up by armies and cast down just as quickly. Civil war erupted not only in Rome, but across distant provinces as legions declared for different masters. Blood flowed. Authority fractured. The empire trembled. From this chaos emerged a man shaped not by ambition, but by endurance. Vespasian had spent his life in service, commanding troops, administering provinces, surviving the instability of Rome without courting its favor. He was no aristocrat polished by the Senate, nor a tyrant intoxicated by spectacle. He was practical, direct, tired of disorder. When his legions declared him emperor, it was not greeted with thunderous celebration, but with relief. Under Vespasian, Rome began to heal. Finances were restored. Discipline returned. Excess was stripped away. He rebuilt what Nero had wasted and what civil war had burned. Competence mattered more than lineage. Stability mattered more than glory. In the heart of Rome, construction began on a massive amphitheater, the Colosseum, rising where Nero's private palace had once stood. It was a deliberate gesture. The city belonged to the people again, not the whims of one man. Vespasian's sons followed him. Titus ruled briefly but earned lasting respect. During his reign, Mount Vesuvius erupted, burying Pompeii and Herculaneum beneath ash and silence. Titus responded with urgency and generosity, sending aid, opening the imperial treasury, and earning a reputation as a ruler who felt the weight of human suffering. Domitian succeeded him. Where Titus was open, Domitian was guarded. Where his brother sought affection, Domitian sought control. He ruled longer, tightened authority, and grew suspicious of those closest to him. Eventually, that suspicion was returned. He was assassinated in his own palace. The Flavian line ended, but the empire did not. For once, the Senate and the army agreed. They chose Nerva, an aging senator with no heirs and no desire for absolute power. His reign was short but meaningful. He restored balance, softened authoritarian rule, and made a decision that would echo through history. He adopted his successor. Trajan was a soldier's emperor. Born in Hispania, hardened by command, loved by his troops. Under him, Rome reached its greatest territorial extent. He marched north and east, defeating the Dacians and seizing their gold. He pushed into Armenia and Mesopotamia, extending Roman influence to the edges of the known world. At its height, the empire stretched from the Atlantic Ocean to the Persian Gulf. Yet Trajan was remembered not only for conquest, but for fairness. He governed with dignity, restrained cruelty, and respected law. When he died, he was mourned as an ideal ruler. Hadrian succeeded him and chose restraint. He understood what Trajan had proven: the empire had grown vast. Too vast to expand endlessly without breaking. Hadrian abandoned distant conquests and focused instead on fortifying what Rome already held. He traveled constantly, inspecting borders, repairing cities, commissioning temples, and encouraging cultural exchange. In Britannia, he ordered the construction of a massive wall, not as a symbol of fear, but of limits. Hadrian ruled as a guardian rather than a conqueror. His reign was thoughtful, curious, and quietly sorrowful. Antoninus Pius followed. His reign was so peaceful that later generations would struggle to find drama within it. No great wars. No mass executions. No civil collapse. Law was refined. Education supported. Provinces stabilized. He governed from Rome, trusting the system to function without spectacle. For decades, the empire moved smoothly under his care. Marcus Aurelius inherited not peace, but crisis. Plagues swept the cities. Invasions pressed the northern borders. The Danube frontier burned with constant conflict. Marcus ruled from military camps as often as from palaces. In moments of solitude, he wrote reflections on duty, mortality, and restraint, private thoughts never meant for publication. They revealed a ruler burdened by responsibility, yet unwavering in purpose. He believed power was a test of character. Together, these rulers formed what history would later call the Age of the Five Good Emperors. Power passed not by accident, but by choice. Stability outweighed vanity. Law outlived ego. Rome reached its height not through terror, but through balance. For nearly 2 centuries, the Pax Romana held. Roads stitched continents together. Grain flowed into the capital. Trade crossed deserts and seas. More than 50 million people lived beneath Rome's authority, speaking different languages, worshipping different gods, living different lives. The empire did not erase difference. It absorbed it. Cities pulsed with rhythm. Rome itself was a maze of marble and smoke, baths, temples, forums, crowded apartment blocks leaning toward collapse. The poor lived in insulae, fetching water from fountains, cooking over open flames. The wealthy retreated into villas filled with mosaics and gardens. Markets shouted. Children memorized poetry. Senators walked beneath colonnades heavy with ritual. In the provinces, Roman roads cut through ancient lands. Aqueducts carried water across valleys. Law courts replaced tribal feuds. Trade bound distant peoples together. Slavery underpinned it all. Millions labored without freedom, sustaining the structure that promised peace to others. The system endured because it was efficient, not because it was kind. Religion filled every corner of life. Jupiter and Mars remained, but Eastern gods arrived: Isis, Mithras, unfamiliar promises of salvation. Among them, Christianity spread quietly, carried by letters and belief rather than armies. For now, it remained small. But it did not fade. When Marcus Aurelius died in 180 CE, he did what none before him had done. He named his son. Commodus inherited the empire, not by merit, but by blood. And with that choice, something subtle changed. The peace did not end in flames. It did not shatter overnight. It softened. The rhythm slipped. The harmony faltered. The machine that had run so smoothly began to lose its timing. At first, almost no one noticed. The year was 180 CE. When Marcus Aurelius died, Rome did not erupt in chaos. There were no immediate riots. No walls fell. No cities burned. And yet something essential ended with him. For nearly a century, the empire had been guided by men chosen not by blood, but by judgment. Emperors who ruled with restraint, who understood that power was a responsibility rather than a performance. That quiet tradition died when Marcus named his son as heir. Commodus ascended the throne not because he was ready, but because he was born. Commodus was not a monster in the beginning. He was young, confident, and convinced of his own importance. Raised in luxury and shielded from consequence, he had never learned the rhythms of governance or the patience of administration. The empire, to him, was not a system to maintain, but a stage to dominate. He adored spectacle. He dressed as Hercules. He fought as a gladiator in the arena. He demanded applause not for Rome's victories, but for his own image. While crowds cheered, the Senate grew bitter. While festivals continued, the military watched carefully. And beneath the noise, the empire began to drift. Rome felt, for the first time in generations, without direction. In the final days of 192 CE, Commodus was killed quietly. Strangled in his bath by a wrestler, betrayed by those closest to him, his death came not as a shock, but as a release. The city prepared to welcome a new year, believing that order would return. It did not. His assassination did not restore balance. It removed the last illusion holding things together. What followed was not one collapse, but many. Between 235 and 284 CE, the empire entered a long season of instability remembered as the crisis of the 3rd century. More than 20 emperors claimed the throne. Most were soldiers raised up by their legions in distant provinces. Few ruled long. Fewer still died peacefully. Emperors were cut down in battle. Murdered by their own troops. Executed by rivals who would soon meet the same fate. The imperial throne was no longer an office of law. It was a reward seized by force. As generals fought generals, Rome's enemies watched. Armies turned inward, abandoning the borders they were meant to protect. The Rhine and Danube were crossed not once, but again and again. From the east, the Sassanid Persian Empire pressed forward with discipline and confidence. Cities fell. Legions retreated. Fortresses that had stood for centuries were breached. This time, invasions were not exceptions. They became patterns. The empire began to break apart. In the west, Gaul declared itself independent, ruled by its own emperors. In the east, the desert city of Palmyra rose under the command of Queen Zenobia, carving out a powerful domain that challenged Rome directly. For a moment in history, Rome no longer ruled the world. It struggled simply to remain whole. The consequences reached ordinary lives. Trade slowed. Coinage lost value. Famine returned to cities that once overflowed with grain. Plague followed hunger. In some regions, populations collapsed by half. Marble forums echoed with emptiness. Streets once alive with argument and commerce whispered only fear. Many believed the gods had abandoned Rome. Others believed Rome had offended them. The idea of eternity shattered. Yet the empire did not fall. From the chaos rose soldiers hardened by the frontier. Among them was Aurelian, a man of relentless energy and iron discipline. He marched without pause. He crushed the breakaway empires, defeated Zenobia and reclaimed the east, drove invaders back across the borders. For a brief moment, Rome was whole again. He was granted a rare title, Restitutor Orbis, restorer of the world. Sensing the danger even at the heart of power, he surrounded Rome itself with massive walls, accepting what earlier generations had never imagined, that even the capital could be threatened. But like so many emperors of his age, Aurelian did not live to complete his work. He was betrayed by his own officers and killed. The storm continued. The crisis of the 3rd century was not one disaster. It was a slow erosion of confidence. The empire had grown too vast. It relied too heavily on military loyalty. And it had never solved the question of succession. Rome survived, but only barely. And survival demanded transformation. In 284 CE, Diocletian seized power. He was not a conqueror driven by glory. He was an organizer shaped by necessity. The world he inherited was exhausted. Too fractured for tradition. Too wounded for illusion. Diocletian understood that the old forms could no longer hold the empire together. So he abandoned them. Diocletian did something no emperor before him had dared. He divided power. Not in weakness, but in design. He appointed Maximian as co-emperor, granting him authority over the west while Diocletian governed the east. Together they ruled as equals, both bearing the title Augustus. Then they appointed 2 junior emperors, Caesars, beneath them. 4 rulers. 4 centers of power. 1 empire. This system, the Tetrarchy, was not meant to inspire love. It was meant to function. Diocletian reshaped more than administration. He expanded the army, rebuilt taxation, strengthened bureaucracy, and he transformed the image of the emperor. No longer a first citizen, the emperor became a sacred figure. Subjects bowed. Ceremony replaced familiarity. Diocletian adorned himself in jeweled robes and adopted titles that emphasized divine authority. Distance became power. Religion, too, demanded attention. The empire was crowded with gods. Old gods and foreign ones. Temples stood beside shrines. But one belief unsettled Diocletian deeply. Christianity. Christians refused to sacrifice to the emperor, refused to honor the traditional gods, refused to blend faith with state. To Diocletian, this was not just belief, it was defiance. He launched the most severe persecution in Roman history. Churches were destroyed, scriptures burned, believers imprisoned, tortured, executed. But the faith endured, and in resisting destruction, it grew stronger. In 305 CE, Diocletian did the unthinkable. He abdicated. He retired to the Dalmatian coast, leaving power behind to tend gardens in silence. His co-emperor followed him into retirement, exactly as planned. But the system he designed could not survive ambition. Civil war returned. From that conflict rose Constantine, a soldier like many before him. But unlike the rest, he carried a different story. On the eve of battle near the Milvian Bridge in 312 CE, Constantine claimed to see a vision, a cross of light in the sky and words promising victory. He ordered his troops to mark their shields with a Christian symbol. He won. In 313 CE, Constantine issued the Edict of Milan, ending official persecution and granting Christianity legal tolerance. The shift had begun. Later, he moved the capital east, away from Rome and its ancient weight. On the site of Byzantium, he built a new city, Constantinople. A new Rome. A new center. A new future. By the end of the 4th century, Christianity became the state religion. Pagan temples closed. Bishops gained influence. Imperial imagery merged with sacred symbolism. And after the death of Theodosius I, the empire was divided once more, this time permanently. East and West. The East would endure. The West would weaken. The Western Roman Empire still looked impressive. But beneath the surface, strength drained away. Emperors relied on generals. Generals relied on soldiers not born Roman. Men once labeled barbarians now commanded Roman armies. The world beyond the frontier was changing, and entire peoples were moving. In 376 CE, a vast group of Visigoths gathered along the Danube. They were not invaders. They were refugees. Driven westward by the advance of the Huns, they asked Rome for shelter. What happened next would reshape history. They did not arrive as conquerors. The Visigoths came offering obedience. They laid down their weapons and asked only for land, food, and protection beneath Roman law. The emperor of the time, Valens, agreed. The gates were opened. The river was crossed. But what followed was not welcome, it was neglect. Roman officials assigned to manage the settlement saw opportunity instead of responsibility. They withheld supplies. They demanded bribes. They sold rotten food at impossible prices. Hunger spread. Anger followed. And resentment, once planted, grew quickly. Within 2 years, submission turned into rebellion. In the summer of 378 CE, Roman forces met the Visigoths in open battle near the city of Adrianople. Valens chose speed over caution, pride over patience, confidence over preparation. The result was catastrophic. The Roman army collapsed under pressure. Cavalry failed to arrive. Formations broke. Emperor Valens himself was killed, his body never recovered. Nearly 2/3 of the imperial force lay dead by nightfall. It was not merely a defeat. It was a revelation. Rome could no longer command its borders. The legions, the symbol of order for centuries, had been shattered by men who had once begged to live under Roman protection. The aftermath brought no clean resolution. The Visigoths were not expelled. They remained inside the empire, sometimes allies, sometimes enemies, always restless. They moved from province to province seeking land, status, and recognition. At their head stood Alaric. He was not a destroyer by instinct. He had served Rome. He understood its ranks, its titles, its promises. What he wanted was simple legitimacy. A homeland for his people. A place within the system that still claimed universal authority. Rome refused. Clinging to an outdated sense of supremacy, officials denied him again and again. And so Alaric turned from negotiation to pressure. He marched. In the year 410 CE, Alaric led his forces to the gates of Rome. More than 8 centuries had passed since a foreign army last entered the city by force. Rome's name had long outlived its reality, but belief in its inviolability remained. Until the gates opened. For 3 days, the Visigoths moved through the city. They looted treasure, seized valuables, and took captives, but they did not burn Rome. They did not erase it. They broke something more powerful. They shattered the illusion. The sack of Rome echoed across the known world. To many, it felt like the end of history itself. If Rome could fall, what could possibly endure? In truth, Rome had been hollowing out for decades. The Western imperial court no longer resided there. Power had shifted to Ravenna, a city protected by marshland and distance. The Senate remained, but it had become ceremonial, an echo chamber of memory rather than authority. Real control belonged to generals. Many were not Roman by birth. Among them was Stilicho, a commander of Vandal origin who fought tirelessly to preserve imperial unity. He succeeded where others failed, but success bred suspicion. The court turned on him. He was executed by the very empire he defended. Others followed the same path. Rise. Service. Betrayal. As Roman authority weakened, movement accelerated. The Vandals crossed Gaul, passed into Spain, and eventually seized North Africa, capturing Carthage and severing Rome's grain supply. The Franks settled permanently in northern Gaul. Across the east, the Huns surged forward under Attila, driving entire peoples before them. In 452 CE, Attila marched toward Rome itself. Once again, the city was spared, this time by negotiation. Pope Leo I met Attila in person. Why the Hun king turned back remains uncertain. Disease, diplomacy, fear, myth. Whatever the reason, the reprieve was temporary. By the mid-5th century, the Western Roman Empire no longer functioned as a sovereign state. It was a collection of failing provinces, abandoned forts, and fractured loyalties. Emperors came and went, often installed by military strongmen who ruled from behind the throne. The purple robes still existed. The titles still echoed. But authority had evaporated. The East endured. The West unraveled. In 476 CE, the Western throne was occupied by a boy, Romulus Augustulus. His name carried the weight of myth and empire. Romulus, the founder. Augustus, the first emperor. But he held no power. He was a symbol placed on display while decisions were made elsewhere. Those decisions belonged to Odoacer, a general of Germanic descent, raised within Roman military culture. Odoacer understood the system better than most who claimed to inherit it. He marched on Ravenna. There was no great battle. He deposed the boy emperor and sent the imperial regalia east to Constantinople with a message: the West no longer needed an emperor. Kings would rule now. There was no official declaration, no final ceremony, no funeral for the empire. The Senate continued to meet. Roman law lingered. Latin prayers filled churches. But the idea of a single empire ruling the Western world had ended. Rome did not fall in a day. It dimmed. And from its fading light, new kingdoms emerged. carrying fragments of Roman law, language, and memory into a future no longer called Roman. Yet Rome itself did not disappear. In the east, the empire endured. From Constantinople, fortified by walls, enriched by trade, and shaped by Christian belief, the Roman state continued. Its people did not call themselves Byzantine. They called themselves Romans. They believed the empire still lived. Constantinople was not a copy of old Rome. It was something new. Greek in language, Christian in faith, Roman in law and ambition. Its emperors ruled as sacred figures. Its art shimmered with gold. Its diplomacy was precise and patient. And its survival depended on adaptation rather than nostalgia. In the 6th century, one emperor dared to dream of restoration. Justinian envisioned a reunited empire. He sent generals west. Victories followed. North Africa reclaimed, Italy reconquered, Rome itself restored. For a moment, the past seemed within reach. But the cost was immense. Plague returned. The treasury emptied. Enemies regrouped. And when Justinian died, the dream faded. The Eastern Roman Empire would never again rule the Mediterranean world. But it would survive. Through invasions. Through religious upheaval. Through centuries of pressure. Constantinople stood. And as long as it stood, Rome lived, not as a city on the Tiber, but as an idea carried forward in law, faith, and memory. They had watched centuries pass. They had seen borders shift like tides, watched kingdoms rise, fracture, and vanish from the map. New languages replaced old ones. New banners flew where Roman standards once stood. And yet, through it all, they continued to call themselves Romans. Beneath domes washed in golden candlelight, they gathered to sing hymns older than memory. Their churches glimmered with mosaics that caught the light like frozen dawn. Their rituals endured. Their laws remained. And their belief was unshaken. They believed their city was eternal. They believed its walls were unbreakable. For a long time, it seemed they were right. But no empire escapes time. Not even one that outlives its twin. Not even one shielded by 3 rings of stone and the deepest harbor the ancient world had ever known. The fall of Constantinople did not arrive in a single moment. It came as a slow fading, a loss of breath stretched across generations. By the 11th century, the empire had grown smaller, more fragile. The disciplined armies of old were gone, replaced by mercenaries and strained levies. The economy staggered beneath the weight of war, debt, and shifting trade routes. In the east, the Seljuk Turks pressed forward, tightening their grip on Anatolia. That land had once been the empire's lifeblood, its grain fields, its soldiers, its strength. Now it slipped away. Defeat followed defeat. Resources thinned. Confidence drained from the marble streets of the capital like water from cracked stone. Then came a wound deeper than any loss of territory. In 1204, during the Fourth Crusade, an army from Western Europe, Latin Christians sworn to defend the faith, turned their weapons not toward the Holy Land, but toward Constantinople itself. Lured by politics, debt, and ambition, they attacked the very city they had promised to protect. The walls were breached. The churches were looted. The libraries burned. For 3 days, the Queen of Cities was consumed by fire and terror. Sacred relics were stolen. Gold was melted down. Monks were slain. Women were dragged from sanctuaries that had stood for centuries. It was not merely defeat. It was humiliation. And it came not from foreign unbelievers, but from those who claimed the same God. The empire was carved apart and handed to rulers who did not understand its language, its laws, or its soul. And yet, even then, it did not end. In 1261, Byzantine forces reclaimed Constantinople. The emperors returned. The chants echoed again beneath the domes. The mosaics were repaired, piece by piece. But something had been lost forever. The city still stood, but it stood wounded. What followed was not revival, but survival. The empire had become a shadow, confined to the city and a scattering of lands in Greece. The emperors no longer commanded continents. They guarded a memory. They were no longer masters of history, but its stewards. Beyond the walls, a new power was rising. The Ottoman Turks, forged in Anatolia, disciplined and relentless, advanced city by city, province by province, until only Constantinople remained. The walls were strong. The spirit endured. But the balance had shifted. In the spring of 1453, Sultan Mehmed II began the final siege. For 53 days, the city resisted. Citizens stood beside soldiers. Monks carried stones. Foreign volunteers joined the defense. Prayers filled the churches. Songs rose from rooftops. They waited for a miracle. None came. On the morning of May 29th, the walls were breached. The last emperor, Constantine XI, heir to a line stretching back over 1,000 years, died fighting at the barricades. His body was never found. With him, an empire ended. Hagia Sophia fell silent. Its bells ceased. Its altars were stripped. And then it was consecrated again, not as a basilica, but as a mosque. The conquerors did not erase the city. They transformed it. Constantinople became Istanbul. And the empire that had once ruled from the fog of Britannia to the sands of Egypt, from the forests of Gaul to the plains of Mesopotamia, drew its final breath. Yet Rome did not vanish. It lived on in law, shaping courts and kingdoms across Europe. It lived on in language, in science, in architecture. It lived in cathedrals and armies, in empires yet unborn. Caesars would rise again, in name if not in truth, in distant lands, centuries later. The idea of Rome outlived the city itself. From a shepherd's village beside the Tiber to golden walls along the Bosphorus, Rome endured for more than 2,000 years. It conquered. It governed. It adapted. It survived. It raised gods and buried nations. It promised eternity. But power never is eternal. Only memory remains. Only story endures. And now, this story, of marble and blood, of faith and fire, of centuries shaped by vision and violence, has been passed to you. Good night.